I was in my first year in the college. I was studying acting, and we were in the acting class, and it was almost at the end of the year. And we were having a conversation about our communication with our families, parents. Somehow we were talking about this. I don't know how we came to that point. But our teacher, acting teacher, asked, "How is your communication with your parents?" And I immediately thought about my communication with my parents, and particularly with my father. Because of some cultural references, traditional references, my communication with my father was kind of distanced. I can call it a bit cold. So I wasn't really able to speak about everything that I have, or I wasn't really able to give a hug straight away. By then I thought, when was the last time I gave a hug to my father? I said, I don't remember. And I told this to my teacher and my classmates. And the teacher said, okay, I'm giving you something now. When you go back to your hometown for your summer holiday, I want you to go and give a hug to your father without saying anything, and take a picture of it and send it to me. If you do this, you will pass this subject with the highest mark, and that'll be it. I said, okay, I'll do that for sure, because it's amazing, it's an amazing opportunity. And I went back to my hometown, and my father was working, and he came back home, and I was waiting for him. I told my mother that take a picture when I was giving a hug to my father, and she was ready to take a picture. And he went in, and I gave a hug. He was shocked, he was smiling, his face turned red, and he was asking, is everything okay? Why are you giving a hug to me? I said, it just came from my heart. And then he was smiling, laughing, he was so happy, like a child. I was too, and my mother too. So, and then I sent the photo to my teacher, and I got the highest mark in the subject. So that was my point. And yeah, sorry? But the most important point of this story is from that moment on, now even when I'm in my house, when I see my father, I can give a hug without saying anything. And we broke this distance and called communication, and it was really important.
One of my best memories of my children is when my eldest son was actually colouring. And when he was colouring, he used to take all the colours, and on it then he would have a shape of a man or a dog or a cat. And the problem was with him was that it was a big picture, and he was trying to keep inside. I was telling him, and he said, no, he says, Daddy, he says, when I'm drawing this, I'm drawing the same colour as the mudra that we had, or the cat. And I said to him, but sure, look, if you look at him, he's brown, so just go brown inside the lines. He said to me, oh, Daddy, he says, there's loads of light and stuff around him. And I said, what do you mean? He says, I see different colours around the different cats, and you, Daddy, are vibrant with green energy. And I said, where did you see this? He said, no, he says, I said it to the school teacher, and she says, don't mind that, she says, colour inside the line. So since then, of course, as I've actually done and seen with people, I've discovered that an awful lot of children are gifted, and we all have gifted children all over the years. And what I've discovered is that some of them actually see white, bright light and different colours. We now know them as aura, yeah, of course. And chakras in Chinese medicine is actually used to heal yourself. So at that stage, and he was 7 years old, we realised he was able to see colour and change and bioenergy coming off cats and pets and animals and dogs. And at that stage there, I said to him, fair dues to you, that was a lovely way to go. So since then, I've asked him a few times, and what he found out was that he has different cards for different energy. So he's now starting to do energy courses, and it's fantastic that he's actually into the future able to teach his children what he taught me. Thanks, lads.
When I was a teenager, I took some extra English classes, and my English teacher was a wonderful, talented woman. She was quite old, like not old, she was like about 50 years old. Sorry. But I adored her because she was so talented. She knew English, German, some other languages, and also she was interested in ethnography and in magical rituals of the area where we lived and our traditions and different cultures. And she didn't have a family or kids, but she just loved her life, and she was so passionate about the things that she had in her life. And I was so impressed by her. I wanted to be like her. I wanted to be independent and just do something, even if it's weird. But if I like it, I wanted to do it. And a couple of years ago, I realized that I became really similar to her, because I'm teaching English for Russian kids, like she did. And I am really enjoying ethnography and magic and learning about it and all these traditions. So I started thinking about maybe I am this role model for my students, at least for one of them. And I met this woman again this summer, and we talked, and it was just so nice to talk to her when I am an adult, and she's still this independent young spirit.
This story is about my son Diarmuid. He's a beautiful young man. He's 36 years old now. And when he was a baby, just not a baby, but about 2 or 3 years old, I was hoovering one time, and one day, and I left the hoover out of my hand, and Diarmuid picked up the hoover, and he went about hoovering up the fire, if you don't mind. And when he was young, he was just impossible. He was next to impossible. And you know, as a teenager, I wouldn't have had a great relationship with him at all, a very distant relationship with him. And then he moved abroad, and he went to college first of all. I thought he would never go to college because he never opened a book in his life, you know, in secondary school. And as I say, he went to college, and he went for 3 years initially, and I thought, oh great, he's going to be finished in 3 years and I won't have to be handing out any more money and all this, you know, the usual story, even though I wanted him to have an education and everything. But anyway, he pipes up after he finishes, gets his diploma, and he says, I'm going to go to college in Sunderland. I said, another year of it. So anyway, he went to Sunderland, and it came to the time for going to get his degree, get his conferring. And I said, Diarmuid, that'll be a great day out. Oh no, he says, ma'am, I'm not going to pick up my degree. And I was so insulted, I really was. And I said, you know what, that's Diarmuid just being himself. But when he was younger, I remember looking at him one day and saying to him, you know, Diarmuid, I said, you'll be fine in life. You'll be fine in life. And now Diarmuid is teaching in, he got his degree in sports science and development, and he's teaching in an international school in Bangkok, and has been there for that particular school for about 3 years. And he's now engaged to a lovely Thai girl. She's a Buddhist, and we meet, we talk. I'm going to say we haven't met. We actually haven't been together in the one place for almost 4 years. But we keep in touch every week by phone, and we have great conversations, really great heart-to-heart conversations. And this has happened through us dealing with our own trauma in our own lives, you know, in my life, and I'm able to reach out to Diarmuid, he's able to reach out to me. And it's not about me anymore, you know, it's just not about me anymore, it's about him now, you know, and it's about our relationship together. And we have a really good connection built up over the last 3 or 4 years, you know, it's been really great. And I so love Diarmuid.
When I was a child, growing up, I always found it very fascinating how powerful my grandmother was. And I remember when I was a child, I used to think, oh, when I grow up, I want to be just as powerful as she is. And although we were very distant, I always could feel that there was an invisible, strong bond between her and me. But she used to be always very tough, always in most vulnerable occasions, she would calm herself down and don't react emotionally. Just she built a boundary around her to protect herself in a way. And I always, when I was a child, I always fancied that. I always thought how empowering that is. Now, because there was times, for example, when my grandfather passed away, I remember her not shedding one tear. And there are other circumstances where I could go on and on about how tough she looked in a lot of situations. But when I feel like that really made, I don't believe in the glorification of being the opposite of vulnerable, but I do believe in empowerment of women. But growing up, I realize more and more how important it is for a human to be vulnerable in order to let go of things and be open and don't hold on to their traumas and be able to just let it go. And I always thought my grandma had no vulnerability in her. I always thought that she was a very tough person, didn't have any emotions, until 3 weeks ago, before I left for Ireland. I had 3 hours left for my flight, and it was around midnight, and my grandma came in the kitchen and she said, "Do you want me to wait or do I go to sleep?" And I told her, "Go to sleep." And she came and we hugged, and she told me, her voice cracked as she was telling me to take care of myself when I leave. And then when she left, I realized how even the people who we find the most toughest, the most powerful, there is always a vulnerable part of them that they hide inside, and in order to protect themselves from their surroundings and from their environment. And I just sat in the kitchen and cried for 3 hours straight until I left for airport.
When I was about 11, 12, I saved up my pocket money, and you used to get these stamps in the post office, and you'd get a book and you'd use pennies and save your stamps. And I wanted to buy an LP, my first LP. This is before CDs, this is ancient times. So I saved up the money and I went over to the shopping centre and I bought the LP, and I bought a small single as well. And I came home, and in our sitting room there was a record player, and it was under books and magazines, and I was reaching under to find it, and I pulled it out and it wouldn't work, and I was there trying to get it to work. So my dad came home from work, and I can still see the brown suit, the tweed suit, and I remember him looking at the record player, and he was kind of like, so I was like, "Dad, make it work, make it work." So he was looking at it and he said, "Oh, okay." And I remember him saying this, "We need a new needle." So I don't know, a day or two later, this new needle appeared. And I don't remember what the timeline was, but not long after that, we had this state-of-the-art stereo appeared in our house. This is before a washing machine or a car or anything. So this mega stereo with amazing speakers appeared. So my dad had a love of music, but he was so busy rearing, times were hard, he was rearing 4 kids, and suddenly he got back into his music. So he was playing, he's big into jazz, and there was always music blasting out of the house, and my mother was always apologising to the neighbours. And it gave me a love of music. And I used to love going into the sitting room, and I always remember Barbra Streisand, her song People. If you don't know it, look it up. And people, people who need people. Beautiful song. And I used to just close my eyes, and it was like she was in the room with me, just singing. So teenage years can be tough, And music was always the thing that I went to, and I just put on music and listened to it. And my dad is now 87, and he's a jazz DJ on the local radio, and he just inspires me that he just loves doing it. He was so good as a dad, you know, being responsible, doing a job he didn't particularly like, to pay a mortgage and rear 4 kids, but he always kept his interests. So he's such an inspiration, and I love bringing him down to Clare and bringing him to music and bringing him out. And I've such a love for my parents, and it's a lovely thing from having had a hard time as a teenager and walking away from them in my 20s going, what the fuck, like. But it's a lovely thing now at 58 to just really, really love my parents. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to say or do anything. I just really have such a love for my parents, and they've really inspired me.
I notice a lot when I'm in a shop or I'm in a restaurant that a lot of people are frowning. They're not happy with their jobs. They're impatient to get to the end of the day, and they look forward to the weekends. They don't like what they do, and they don't like the people they work with. But that's a shame, because I've seen my dad, who loves to work where he works. He loves what he does. He loves the people he works with, and he loves his clients. And you can see him, and you can see the joy in his face. You can see him smile, you can see him laugh, and you can see him joke around with people who work with him. And I think it's very important to actually like what you do. And I don't know what I want to do yet, but I hope when I do know, I'll enjoy doing it. My grandpa, Jim, he's a really funny man. He's a really nice guy. And all throughout our childhood, he loved to like tell us stories, you know, stories that he might have made up or he might have heard from someone else. But he loved to tell us stories about his youth, about growing up in Limerick City and like moving around, all sorts of stuff. And I remember a story in particular where he and his brother Brian, like they used to go on big cycling adventures. They'd go from Limerick over to Waterford or up to Dublin once. But they once went cycling to Kilkee, and they brought a backpack with them because they had a tent inside it, and they were like, yeah, we're gonna stay a couple nights in just anyone's field, just some field somewhere. It'd be grand. And so they made a campfire, and it was nighttime. The camp was all set up, and then Brian just fell onto the fire. He burned up his leg. But on every single one of these trips, they made a promise, and they were like, okay, we have to make sure to send a postcard back home every single trip, you know, just to make sure they know that we're fine, because they didn't have phones or whatever. So he sent back a card that said, it was like, hey, you know, we're doing fine, everything's great. Brian's leg is okay now. And it just made me think, because growing up in rural Ireland, being interested in acting and movies and theatre and music, it's not the most popular thing to be into when there's farmers around every corner and GAA is all over the shop. But my grandpa taught me that, you know, it's important to just, you know, find people that you connect with and just enjoy life. Do things that you enjoy and just see the world, you know.
So the story goes there about this under the stairs. One evening we were trying to put he was 6 years old that time, the same guy, and we wanted to put him to bed. And he said, have you any spare pillow? And I said, what do you want a spare pillow for? And he said, listen, he says, I have a fairy that's actually walking around with me. I said, you hardly have a fairy going around with you. He says, yeah, Daddy, I have. You know, from the book you give me to read, Sean is here, the fairy. And I said, what about him? And he says, Sean, wants to live underneath the stairs with us. So I said, that's grand. So I said, what will I do? And he said, give me a pillow and I can put it underneath. So when he wants to go to sleep at night time, when I'm going to sleep, I know that he's sound. And that was it. That's a real good fairy story. I've learned that in our generation alone, that we actually have lost touch. We haven't been taught everything in schools. We haven't been shown where energy and energy flows. And I know now, going forward into medicine, more and more people are going for holistic medicine. And now I can see why. My kid has taught me that we are full of energy. And if we actually look at our energy as food to energy, we could actually make a massive difference in this world. And that's what I was taught, and it was a very good lesson. Amen.